Good morning. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter, your Consciousness Transformation Ascension Guide and originator of Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. And it's funny because I'm like, oh, I really want to talk about something else besides this coronavirus stuff. But there are a lot of lessons to be discussed having to do with it. So we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to talk let's turn off that sound. We're going to talk about what the bigger lessons are, because a lot of people are getting so stuck in the muck. I like that. And I'm pulling this up because I can never see comments. I never seem to see comments when I'm on live, so I have to do it on my phone in case somebody comments something. All right, good. So many. Good morning, Anne. So many. So it's like I was saying, yeah, there's so many things, other things. There are a lot of other things going on in the world, by the way, but most people don't recognize that. Good morning, Gloria. Oh, look, I can see people talking and commenting today. Great. And so we have so much focusing around fear. Okay, great. We have so much focusing around like how to cope with fear and all that kind of stuff. So the messages that are really important right now are looking at higher consciousness. And I was talking about this on a group energy share we did yesterday. We had a really good, solid group of people, a lot of interaction, and we were talking about what were we talking about? We were talking we were talking about the higher message. And part of it is this. We have so much stuff that is hitting us at the lower levels. And fear is what I call a very lower level of our consciousness, right? It's very separation-based, it's ego-based, all that kind of stuff. It's very lack-based and all that. And so we're so very consumed with that. And the test for ourselves is stepping back. Can you step back? Can you transcend that? And can you see what's actually going on at the higher levels? Now, there's a whole bunch of other higher levels too. So, there's conspiracy theorist stuff. There's stuff that I've seen out there energetically that I know is going on. There are things that you see the similar messages from many people getting the same kind of insights, which is fine. And the thing that's really important is this. It's all easy. It's all interesting. And it's sort of a mind game to say, oh, okay, well, look at that. Look at this story. Look at that story. But the key is really to get beyond the fear. And it sounds really easy, right? But right now we have this tendency to get lost in the drama. We have this tendency to spend all of our energy looking at this shiny, which is what I feel like it is. and so then it's like, well, how long do we have to have that shiny out there before we step back and be like, okay, well, let me take a breath and let me look at the bigger lessons. Let me look at what this could possibly be. What is this about? Not just individually, but collectively. What opportunity is this actually giving me? Because, we get lost in the fear. And yes, I understand there are many out there who are, losing money, their income, right? Because of this really weird overreaction and panic worldwide. Well, that's why. Overreaction comes from fear, separation, and lack, and all that kind of stuff. But then it just gets perpetuated and expanded, and then it takes up more energy and more attention until it finally causes us to implode, right? So we're already getting there. So the bigger lesson is to be able to look at what's going on without emotion, without fear, to say, okay, what is really the case, right? What's this really about? And to say, okay, what is the lesson in this, right? And this is no different, by the way, than when I work with my clients one-on-one, because whenever we have something that takes up a lot of energy in separation and ego, fear, anger, resentment, anxiety, blame, judgment, guilt, doubt, all that, sorrow, all that kind of stuff, all that, when we put so much energy into good morning, Sevi. So when we put so much so we put so much energy into money, right? When we put so much energy into fear and those ego-based energies, we lower our vibration, right? We drag ourselves back down into this deep places of separation. And we forget that this is only just a catalyst, right? So when I work with somebody individually, and I work with many who have been like sexually abused, abducted, all kinds of physically abused, had really severe cases of like that would cause deep anger and blame and fear and anxiety and everything. We one of the first things I talk about is, okay, so if you transcended that emotion and you said, okay, so the thing I always talk about is, what is this a catalyst for? Like, what is this a catalyst for? If you took out the emotion of blame and guilt and doubt or whatever, on whatever that is, right? On being, putting all this energy to anger, right? Or to blame and to guilt and all that kind of stuff, and shame, right? If you stopped putting the emotion to it and you looked at it from a picture, like what do they call it, a picture story, what would the lesson be? Like, what on the path, what would that be a direction toward? Is there something that was a catalyst for in your life? And every time, I've never come across somebody that said, no, nothing, because almost immediately they always, in fact, I've worked with people who have terminal illnesses who I'm like, okay, so getting this, how does it serve you? Like, how does it come up into your reality? And when you take the emotion out of it and you look at the bigger thing, you say, okay, so what's the lesson? So the key is so very important for us right now to step back, to get out of the fear, to get out of all this, like distraction, and to say, what is this proposing a lesson for us for, right? What is it there to catalyze, to cause a propulsion to do in our realities? And, there's a lot of discussion about, we're just employed. And there's a lot of defeatist emotion out there right now. Like, oh, we're just like, going to like extinct ourselves again, make ourselves extinct again, and all kind of stuff. So instead of projecting, right, instead of coming down on the whole thing and being negative about it, and we all have those moments. It's very challenging right now to not be in any way, shape, or form. But the key is to step back and be like, okay, so why is this happening? Like, why are we overreacting? Why are we shutting down the entire world? Okay, so not even the why, like, why are we even judging? Like, okay, so like, what if I didn't judge this? If I didn't judge this pandemic, which, is really overblown in many cases, in many kind of, perspectives. But anyway, it's like, if we step back and stop judging it, see, I have a hard time, like, not inserting a little bit of judgment, right? We step back and say, okay, so what is this showing us? Okay, so we have this opportunity right now to take a breath, right? We have all of these things that we say, okay, I want to do all this, and this is where my heart is telling me to go, but I'm so busy every day, I just never have time to do it. I have to pay my bills, so I have to work this job, and so I have to do this, and I have to do that, and I have this obligation, and da-da-da. Well, guess what? The coolest thing about this whole thing is that we're forcing ourselves to stop being busy, right? We're letting ourselves be busy by getting distracted and talking incessantly about this thing. But if we didn't, just think of how much more space we have. And so in the group that I was talking with yesterday, it was great because it was like one person said, there's this online course that I've been like wanting to put together for ages and I just haven't taken the time to do it. Well, guess what? Now I have time to do it. Many of us are self-employed. Many of us have our own businesses. Many of us work for other companies that are like smaller, medium businesses. And then they just don't have the bandwidth, and so you might lose your job. You might lose your pay. And then the biggest thing though is, to say, what opportunities is providing me, right? Everything that we do is a choice, right? We can try to play victim, which is funny because on my Monday podcast with my friend Sarah Evignoni, Ascended World, if you haven't watched it, go watch them over on the Ascended World page. We've been talking about getting beyond victimhood, right? So this is a huge lesson of getting beyond victimhood, to say, oh, and people say, well, how can I not be a victim, right? How can I, because look at what the government's doing this, and they're shutting this down, and they're shutting this down, and 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 I'm afraid of like walking out of the front door and getting smacked in the face with this deadly virus, right? When in reality, it's really just like, a flu. So he says, every doorway connects to another doorway into healing, clearing, resolving, dissolving, and yes, the panic in some circles is explained as showing us a new way, right? New ways to live, to be, to love, to connect, Yeah, the great cocooning. I love that, Sevi. Great. So, so the thing is, though, also, and so then you have these other levels of it. So when you get past, so here's the thing, it becomes more fun when you get past the fear. And yes, I've talked to my own young adult daughter who was panicking about, the possibility of losing her income for the time being. And I'm just like, you know what? How about today? And today, what's really wrong? What's right with today? Like, what can you do with today to make it even better, to enjoy this moment instead of spending all of your energy and time worrying about it? A lot of people I've worked with who've been out of work over the years, I've had many clients who've come to me because they're like, well, I want to create my new job. I want to do this. I want to, do this or whatever. And I'm looking for this other job. And a lot of times it gives them that space to say, this is what I truly want to do. This is where my heart is leading me. This is where my true higher guidance is. And I haven't listened to it for so long because I've just been in that pattern and that rut of saying, oh, well, it's a paycheck. Well, what if it's not a paycheck anymore? Look at what we're serving ourselves on a platter, right? And it's really challenging when you're afraid of the rent and the electricity and payments and all kinds of stuff and losing this and losing that and not having enough for food. And I understand that. The key that's really important, though, is to say, okay, so what can I do today? What can I do right now to really saturate this moment? And is there something right now that I can do? Or is there something for me to do? Is there something for me not to do? And what else can I do? And how can, if I looked at this differently, if I looked at the world shutting down as it has been, what can I do differently? What's there for me? And I talk so much with so many about going inside. This is a great opportunity for those who have claimed they can never get around to meditating to do so, to take some time to do so, to shut down the chatter, to learn how to shut down the chatter when things are a little slower. If you can shut down the chatter on the fear, having to do with the fear mongering on the whole virus thing. And to say, okay, so let me shut down the chatter and shut down the fear. And if I just looked at things from a very objective perspective, if I looked at things as the divine that I am and the creator, by the way, of all of this, what did I create this for? If I put this in my reality, if I create my reality, and I do, then why did I put it here in my reality? I have, and I know many of us who do intuitive work have seen huge catalytic events happening over the past couple decades. Like, we've been seeing visions of those kind of things. And if this is the worst of it, it is probably the most amazing message to us that we got the message and we hit ourselves in the head with something as simple as this. And I know you might laugh at that and scoff at me saying that, but there are so many worse things that could be going on. Worse, and I don't even like saying that because that's an ego word, but there are so many more intense things that would be much more fear-inducing to the ego, right, than this. Because most people you ask, do you know anybody who's had this coronavirus thing? No. Or even if they do you know anybody who's died from it? No. So it's it's like, I was talking to my father-in-law last week, and he said, yeah, it's like weird because when I was a kid, everybody had polio, and everybody, like, polio was going around crazy. He's like, and maybe they closed down school for like a week or two. He's like, but because everybody I knew somebody who died from polio, was disfigured by it or whatever. And he goes, and it's not like I'm saying that's right, like that's right and okay. He's like, but a far worse scenario versus this, right? So instead of like getting lost in the fear and the drama and being a part of the conversation, which is funny because here I am part of the conversation, but this is what guidance has told me to talk about, is to get beyond that so that you can get inside and look at what it is you've been ignoring about yourself. Because if we've created this collectively, which we have, it is our creation, then there is a reason that we did it so that we could shut ourselves down, sort of reset, look at things in a very different light, and go through and give ourselves a chance to do life differently, to start connecting differently, to start connecting more solidly. And And it's easy to then get stuck in listening to other people and what other people say. Even people in the spiritual community. And it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to do this because, to abide by this. And I'm like, why? Why are you abiding by something if your guidance is telling you to do something else? If your guidance is telling you to do something and you are sure in your guidance and know that it's not from the ego and it's from this clear, centered voice, then do it, because there's a reason that's much higher than the reactions at the very 3D level. I've had plenty of things like that, and I don't react to this stuff. I don't react from fear. I have no fear of the virus. I have no fear of getting it. I have no fear of dying. I have no fear of all that kind of, and even if I did die, I'm not afraid of that either. That's all the self-work. That is all the self-reflection, the self-focus, the self-expansion of getting what I call independent, meaning dependent on your guidance within over everything else. And so people think, oh, okay, whatever. And they laugh, they sort of check that off or wave it off. And it's like, but that is the key, because the more you do that, the more you can see, the more you will have visions and understand and have knowing, right, about the bigger picture. And the more you'll do it without fear, because when you do, and the unfortunate part in many cases is sometimes we start getting the visions before we let go of the fear or stay observant to it anyway, right? And then we start looking at this other stuff, right? Like the population control, the contrived events and things like that, which do happen. And it's not just theory, conspiracy theory. It's that we have, and then there's another level of victimhood that sometimes happens that we believe we have, because we're like, oh, well, look, we're being controlled. It's 5G, it's this and that and all that kind of stuff. And I really, I'm like, yes, absolutely, that's absolutely happening. So I'm not going to nix that, because it's absolutely happening. In fact, my guidance for the past couple of years and a couple of my close spiritual tribe have all been guided to really look at what many different people are saying, at some of the information on some of what we call the government conspiracy theory stuff, looking out, getting guidance out there. And then I ask, well, what am I to do with that, right? Because I'm not afraid of it, because it's me controlling me or whatever, right? And then I'm so I want to do that. And it's like, well, it's good to know so that you can navigate it. And now I get what that means. It's important to know so that you can, not really good. It's to know so you can navigate it. Navigating is different than fearing and fighting. Navigating is saying, okay, I see it, and now how do I navigate through it, right? How do I simply get to my particular divine purpose without being limited in that way, because then now people are like, oh, controlled by aliens, oh, controlled by this, controlled by that, control, victimhood. And that's what we're creating. I don't like using the word work because it implies hard. It's what we're creating to transcend, so that we can get back into our own divine self, into our own authenticity, to our own power, right? Gloria says, hopefully what we learn from this now is carried over when things go back to normal. I hope they don't go back to normal. I hope they don't. I'll tell you why in a minute. Anne says, I'm still doing weddings using gloves and wipes. I'm 66 years old and taking immunosuppressant drugs. Just saying precautions, but still doing the work. And so the thing that I always ask is, yes, and Sevi says, this is the new normal. I'm excited for this. Me too. I'm like, finally, we broke it. We broke the pattern, right? Or we're breaking the pattern, and hopefully we continue to. So yes, we're going to look at things at a very 3D level. We're going to look at things of financial crises and the collapse of institutions and the reconfiguring of governments and the reconfiguring of our lives, and how we put different priority on things that are truly from here versus from here, right? We have that opportunity. Now, the thing that I was talking about yesterday amongst the group, because it was like I said, it was a very great media conversation, is the way I understand it and the way I teach it and talk about this, is that if we have something for us to do, and this is individually as well as collectively, we start with small messages. right? To remind, because in separation, we've forgotten this part of our consciousness, has forgotten the bigger picture, right? So we start with small messages. And the more we ignore the messages, the bigger it gets, right? And then, so then we can get sick, we can get injured, we can have debilitating things happen in our lives, right? And so like, and then if we ignore it, it gets even worse. We get chronic disease. Sometimes we get fatal illness or injury, and then have to pop out of this body and pop into another and do the lesson all over again, right? Which we've all done. And then it gets bigger. But then if there's a big lesson, it's a themed lesson for us collectively as this concentric consciousness. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it becomes a collective thing. And that's what I always have talked about. And one of the biggest examples I talk about is World War II with Hitler, right? And people talk about Hitler's bad. I'm like, no, Hitler was actually a fabulous soul tribe who said, well, if we don't take all of these messages and it gets to this collective level, well, then I'll take on the lesson of having to employ this so that people wake up and remember, so that we all wake up to ourselves and remember our connectedness. And if we need that level of catalyst, then we're going to have to employ it, right? And so the ego gets a little fearful when you say things like that, but that's what we're doing. So just look at this. We created this collective thing. So we have been ignoring messages. And yes, many of us have awakened and many of us have really taken the bull by the horn. And yes, it's been a huge shift in awakening in the past decade, especially. And now it's like, okay, but we're accelerating even more in the changing. And it's like, there's some things that we're tripping up with, right? And there's still things that we're holding on to. And somebody had said to me the other day, yesterday on the group thing about how it was so important, like, about like the whole fight of the earth against us and everything. So I said, yeah, but the way I see it, the way I understand it is, it's not us and the earth. Like, we are the earth. We are, this whole collective is one consciousness. And we're, one consciousness even bigger than that. But this is one singular consciousness. And we've created this interconnected earth to do this lesson of experiment that I understand from a much bigger perspective across the multiverse. And so it's to remember our interconnectedness, even in separation, is part of it, right? And so what's happened is, like, we've gone through a whole bunch of lessons, and now it's time now we've accelerated in our shifting, and we collectively as Earth, as Gaia, however you want to personify it, are saying, yes, and now it's time for us to really jump, and it's like we're done with the set of lessons, so we're moving to here. And embody these little pieces and parts of ourselves with this very ego-based, ego-led consciousness. We're holding on and grasping at what we believe is supposed to be important, what we believe is supposed to put value to us and all that kind of stuff, instead of remembering a thing. So it's not that the earth is like, getting angry or is hurt or whatever. The earth is saying, as a collective, now not just the earth, but all of us as the collective, earth consciousness, we're saying we are moving forward and we're done with this lesson. So we are clearing the slate to get rid of all this residual crap. And so if it looks like earthquakes and tsunamis, if it looks like worldwide pandemics, if it looks like whatever, we've got to do it, because these are the set of lessons that we're doing. And the more people, the more us as individuals and the little pieces and parts of the facet hold on and cling on to what doesn't serve the bigger purpose of all of us shifting right into this next level of creation, the more it's just going to have to get intenser and more intenser. That was a good word. More and more intense, so that we can push ourselves into what's next. So, as I said, so we have chosen this. We've created this. So what can we do with it? What is the lesson? The key is to get beyond the fear, to stop being distracted, to say, oh my gosh, yay, I have a breath of fresh air. What is there for me to do from my heart and from my soul, from my spirit as the divine? What is there for me to embody without that distraction of like all the busyness that I don't have right now? And we can make it last for as long as we want. We'll figure it out and we'll create differently. And the longer that it's almost like we're at this drop dead point of, we got to do this, or it's going to get even bigger and even more intense. And then we're going to really have to push the whole process, and however that looks, right? So Sevi says it does become exciting. Boom. Yes. If we're not living our most authentic passions, soul self, then this will hopefully show us how to How to? Oh my God, you're making me giggle. Do you remember what you said like 7 years ago? The grocery line, what we will see while standing in the grocery line. I recall that moment often. Lots of stories from back then. Yes. Yeah. I mean, and could you talk about how I can use Trinity to move more into clear guidance? Yes. I'll talk about that in a second. Am I configuring? I don't mean normal, but when if it goes back to what we do, not highbring, but back to life. Okay. All right. I just wanted to get through all the comments here. So, first of all, Michael's question for anybody here who watches live or record it, because this is to the public and it's not necessarily to Trinity energy progression practitioners or whatever. But the thing as a Trinity practitioner is, what is the first thing that we teach is that the self sessions, the self creations, the tapping in, the self work or self focus, whatever you want to call it, to do this stuff to get yourself out of judgment, out of criticism, to have your observation, to get to a place of unconditional self love. Because when we're in that place of unconditional self love and acceptance, we will listen to our inner guidance above everything else. If we doubt ourselves and we don't think that we are worthy, right? I know a lot of people who are hitting crises levels right now in things where other people are telling them what to do because they should do it. And if they're not, they're a bad person because they're not following like the instructions of the pandemic, And it's the choice of the individual to say, I'm done with this. I can walk away from it. Or I have to continue to abide by this because I'm not worthy enough. They know more than I do. I don't know. I don't know enough. So that's why we make decisions to not do things that we know in our heart are not what really serve us in the bigger picture. This is giving us the opportunity to do that too. So regardless of what everybody says, right? Regardless of when we go back to the basics, right? And that's what we talk about in our Trinity 1 class is finding and remembering unconditional self-love, acceptance as the divine, as the embodiment of the divine, as infinite intelligence and consciousness and ability, then I don't need you to tell me what to do because I already have the answer. And I don't need to listen to anything else except for that, especially when I'm coming from love and from that centeredness. And so that's why I implore everyone, do your self-work, right? If you do, it doesn't have to be Trinity, whatever you're doing, right? If you do any kind of energy work, whatever, make sure you're doing sessions on yourself every single day and looking at every single day. What is my intention? What is my creation? What is my creation for right now? Like to be the optimal me that I can be, right? So we are, and coming to this place of connection and acceptance, like yesterday on the call that I did, one person was talking about how, it's instead of fear, like, what about just respect? And I said, well, respect, I actually would change that even to, like, for me, to acceptance, to say, okay, I understand where I am. I don't need to push it on everybody else. My guidance is to share my understanding so that everybody else can make their own decision, right, within their own guidance, and listen and pay attention. We and to like just give different perspectives, because we're in this real big habit of just listening to what other people say. And when a government official says to do something, we say okay because we think that's supposed to be the right thing to do and they have our best interest at heart. But no. And I'm not saying that I'm not really saying that with judgment. I'm just saying that with understanding. When we can just decide our reality from a place of unconditional self-love and knowing that I am the infinite and I created this. So anybody saying something to me there's a part of my ego or whatever that's saying you shouldn't, whatever. There's something that's being externalized to reflect back to me to consider and to say, is this for me to do right now? And I don't say, is this something I should do? Because that's ego-based too, right? It's stepping back in observance and saying, is this for me to do? Is this my truth? Is this, for my reality? And yeah, it might sound sort of rebellious, but I have always been that way. And it always serves me to listen to the voice, even though and I'll tell you what, there are things that are coming together right now that I was guided to start setting up and doing, months ago. that I had no idea this was coming, and it made no sense to me because I had no context. And now I'm like, oh, bam, now I understand, right? Now, I know others who started planning certain things with me, and then they back out because of the fear, or because of that not self-love, right? The not worthy, the unworthiness, because somebody else told me that I can't do this or else, and started to threaten me and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah. And I'd be like, well, what a great lesson it is for somebody when you say, yeah, I don't need you to try to enforce your opinion on me. This is me. This is my reality, and it's my choice. And yes, people think there are consequences, but are they consequences? Or are they just shifting you into a place of more authenticity and, fierce, what I call fierce authenticity and empowerment? Because sometimes it's just time to step out of it and break the patterns, right? And so some of us will do that here. Some of us won't. And then other lessons will present themselves, and they'll be easier for some of us and they'll be harder for others. It's all, but it's not even harder. It's just important, right? So in honor of that, for this week, this is what I want everybody to do, is start taking a step back and doing what it is to be able to quiet the chatter. And if you are a Trinity practitioner, do your self-work, do your self-Trinity, do sessions with yourself every day. Make sure you're doing creation statements. Make sure you're, spending that time out there in creating that and allowing it to be, and to observe everything that you're thinking. Am I doing that for me? So here's the thing. Whenever you say, well, I am concerned about this, concern is from the ego. And that's fear, right? Okay, if my guidance says to do this, I have no fear about doing it. I just trust it. And I have gotten into such a habit now of listening to it over the years, because I do this every day. I pretty much do my self sessions every single day. It's my priority, because I'm my priority. Like everybody here is to be their own priority. And because we're all the facets of the divine that we embody to be that fulfilled note. And we have been selling ourselves short. And it's even more pressing and prominent today than ever before. And it's sort of like being shown, no more. Allowing ourselves to follow our hearts, and in doing so, allowing the balance to come back in the whole organism that we have created in this interrelated, multi-level, multi-dimensional representation of the earth and this creation, so that we can move into this next set of lessons. So this week there's a couple of things. One is to just pay attention to all your thoughts, to what you're saying, to listening to the words that you're saying and what you're hearing, and just be very cognizant of the shoulds, have to, mustn't, can'ts, all that kind of stuff. And to go inside, find whatever way it is, to go inside and quiet the chatter, to do your self energy work. If you know any form of energy work is fine. If you do Trinity, even better. personal bias. But also, just to let you know, anybody who's watching this live or even listening to the recording, my other podcast and that I do, the Ascended World with my friend Sarah, we do every Monday. But we have a page over on Facebook where we are putting together, we're starting to, and the vision, again, something we put together months ago. And I was like, well, I'm really not sure what this is going to be, but now it's starting to come together. So it's really to bring everybody together and living in a conscious way, living differently, living in this way. And that's really what we want to bring in, a lot of different people to just show examples of living differently and from that place of the heart and from the spirit in a very fiercely authentic and true way. So what we are actually doing, what we were sort of guided to do, is we're going to put together a thing that probably is going to start Monday, maybe Monday or Tuesday. And we're going to start doing daily meditations, and not just me or Sarah, but a whole bunch of different folks that we know who are practitioners of different kinds. We have sound healing people, we have dance people and yoga people are doing that. We're going to just do a daily 30-minute meditation of different kinds, so that we're putting it out there for free, so that you can spend some time exploring, if you're not already exploring it, to really focus on you, just to give you a place if you need some help to get started, or even to continue, or to pick it up again because you let it go or whatever, or to just give yourself the discipline of doing it and getting into the habit again. That's we're going to start doing that. So stay tuned for I'll be posting stuff about that, and it's on the page Ascended World if you want to go and like it. But I'll also be posting on my pages about it. And whatever that is, let go of this. Turn off the TV. Stop watching the news. I said that a long time ago. I stopped a long time ago. And look around you, right? Listen to your heart. Look within you even more. And say, okay, Nikki, yeah, we'll be in touch. That'd be great. And so we will, so anyway, yeah, so more information on that coming. Very excited about that. That sort of came to me as a ding yesterday. But anyway, so look around you, take a breath. I mean, actually, what a beautiful time of year in the Northern Hemisphere, because we're coming in spring. Today, I think, is not today, within the next couple of days is the first day of spring. So yes, and beautiful weather. Get outside, get some fresh air. Stop being afraid. We have this opportunity to not just be authentic, but to be in that place of fierce authenticity from love and connection, and not fear and separation and overpowering and intimidation and victimhood. So if it's to be different, ask yourself, how is that to be different? And let it start to form around you, and leave your heart open and allow all possibility. So thank you for joining me today. I'm sure there'll be plenty more. We have so much fun. It is today. All right. Thank you, Nikki. Wow. It seems to be early. I thought it was always like the 21st or so for spring equinox. So today, what a great time to have this conversation. Have a great day. Enjoy you. Breathe and stay in love. And we'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter signing off with this week's Living the Shift. Bye.